Now, behind the scenes, hundreds of MPs are gearing up to support, oppose or change the route of HS2, the multi-billion-pound high-speed railway scheme. And the arguments aren't just about big-picture questions of transport policy. There are questions about the exact route the line should follow and, above all, about the amount of compensation that will be offered to people whose homes and businesses will be affected. Mark Darcy reports.
A mega project to improve Britain's infrastructure creates winners and losers.
On behalf of Manchester, can I strongly welcome his proposals laid before Parliament here today?
It blights the environment, homes and lives.
MPs Lucy Powell and Michael Fabricant responding to the announcement in January of the preferred routes for HS2, the high-speed rail lines which are intended to slash journey times between London, Northern England and ultimately Scotland. Lucy Powell's Manchester constituents will benefit from that. Michael Fabricant's Staffordshire constituents get the construction, the disruption and the noise. Sir John Armitt, former head of Network Rail and chair of the Olympic Delivery Authorities, been through all that before.
Inevitably, the people who are directly affected, particularly during the construction period, and then potentially by the operation of whether it's a road, an airport or a railway in the longer term, are going to be very nervous and worried about the value of their properties, worried about the impact on, as they see it, and rightly so, the quality of their lives. For any promoter of a major piece of infrastructure, you've got to find ways to, at the end of the day, either overcome the resistance or, as they do perhaps rather better in France than we do, compensate the people who are affected.
And since the Transport Secretary Patrick McLaughlin announced the routes of the two latest branches of HS2 back in January, that's what's been happening in the constituencies affected. Take North West Leicestershire, where local Conservative MP Andrew Bridgen discovered that HS2 would mean a tunnel under the runways of busy East Midlands Airport. He showed me the plans.
They'd have two separate tunnels under the airport, because obviously that's two smaller tunnels under the airport will be safer than having one large tunnel. And obviously there's a huge risk of subsidence, and the warranties and indemnities that these tunnellers will have to offer the airport. Can you imagine the cost if the airport ever has to close because of a problem with the tunnel?
And that's not the only issue. The tunnel under the runway emerges in the middle of a site earmarked for a vast new distribution centre, which would have created thousands of jobs, but which is now understandably on hold.
As you can see, the tunnel actually appears sort of 20% of the way into the potential Wroxhill development. And if you look at the map there, I mean, the size of those buildings, the inspection is that that building's 20 acres, 7,300 jobs. And it was on the point of actually going into planning, to the planning inspectorate at Bristol for commencement of getting planning permission this year, start work in 2015, and the 7,300 jobs being generated around about 2016.
He's been lobbying the Chancellor and senior ministers to get the plans changed and has just become the vice-chair of a parliamentary group which is seeking to coordinate action against HS2. And ominously for the government, it will be chaired by the veteran Conservative Bill Cash. He's focusing on compensation for people whose property's been affected by the project, and he doesn't rule out the possibility that ministers might decide the scheme's unaffordable and that it might simply go away.
I think it's quite possible that it will, but there are tremendous forces within government promoting it. But I also think that having real, proper, fair compensation arrangements is absolutely paramount. People are really very seriously blighted into the almost indefinite future. They simply can't sell their properties. The values of the properties have depreciated massively already, and some people actually are finding that their properties are deemed to be almost worthless.
Even though it will be years before construction starts, the battle for compensation for property blight is well underway. And if the costs mount up, they could sink the whole project. Labour's Nick Rainsford, a former minister, remembers how the issue played out over the original high-speed rail line, the Channel Tunnel Rail Link.
There's always that concern that the promoters of the bill are going to be looking very, very carefully at costs, and compensation costs can be very considerable indeed. And of course precedents get set, and if you have an agreement to compensate one particular landholder in one location, that'll be seized on by hundreds of people in similar positions elsewhere on the line. So great care has to be taken by those promoting the bill to be consistent and to agree only what they know is correct and appropriate and is financially sustainable.
Andrew Bridgen thinks the compensation issue might sink HS2.
This is what's going to ruin the project. It's the compensation that will have to be paid out along the route that will actually make the project unaffordable. There are apparently 300,000 dwellings within a kilometre of the route. People are very attached to their houses. For most people, it's the biggest, most important thing they probably ever buy in their life. And if the government, any government, makes a decision which adversely affects the value of that asset, it's only right that they should have compensation, whether the track goes through their house, 10 metres from their house, 50 metres from their house, 100 metres, 500 metres, or a kilometre or more. If they can show that that has blighted their property value, then it's only right they should be compensated.
And then there are the MPs who want to make changes to the scheme. Toby Perkins, Labour MP for Chesterfield in North Derbyshire, wants a stop in his town.
It could cut journey times to London under the existing proposal by about 40 minutes, and if we were to get a stop in Chesterfield, as I will be calling for, then by nearly an hour. So that will be very positive for businesses and for people who are considering where to locate their business but need access to London.
Such dreams aren't impossible, says Nick Rainsford, who remembers how an alliance of local MPs changed the line for the Channel Tunnel rail link, HS2.
There's a very important lesson. High Speed 1 in its first iteration did not follow the route it does now. And that encountered massive difficulties to the point where the government clearly concluded they could not get a bill through Parliament. And there was agreement that the scheme would be looked at again, and a revised route, which included some intermediate stations at Ebbsfleet and then at Stratford, were incorporated. That, of course, built the number of supporters along the route. So if people have got a persuasive case, and it has to be persuasive, then it is possible for these schemes to be changed.
The battle's barely begun, but when a committee of MPs sits to consider the bill to authorise HS2, a process which could take years, well-organised campaigns and good arguments could divert the line, if not derail it.